This video is going to talk about classifications of protists and go into our first classification. Our protists are divided into three groups. And again, this is our odds and end category, but we're going to group them according to what kingdoms they kind of sort of fit into, but not quite. So our other kingdoms are animal, plant, and fungus, and therefore we are going to have animal-like protists, plant-like protists, and fungus-like protists. So we are going to break those into three subgroups. In this video, we're going to look at our first one, which is animal-like protists. Animal-like protists go by a different name as well, called protozoan. So remember, animal-like and protozoan are really the same terminology here, just different words for it. Our first thing is that these are animal-like. So remember that animals are heterotrophs, and therefore animal-like protists will also be heterotrophs. They need to have some way to find food. If you're going out to hunt and find food, then you need some way of moving around. Again, if you make your own food, then you can just be stationary and just bask in sunlight or different chemicals that help you photosynthesize this food. But as a heterotroph, you need to go out and find it. So we are going to further break down protozoan into the way that they actually move. All animal-like protists or protozoans are also going to end up being unicellular, so keep that in mind as well. We are going to classify them further down. So not only are these all protists, not only are these all protozoans, these are also going to be further broken down on how they move to obtain their food. So we're going to look at protozoans with pseudopods, protozoans with cilia, protozoans with flagella, like you should be familiar with the term flagellum, flagella, right? And we're going to also look at protozoans that are parasitic or parasites. So first we're going to look at pseudopods. These are also called sarcodines. The pseudopod is a temporary bulge in the cell. It literally means false foot. Pseudo means false, and pod means foot, so pseudopod means false foot. We have a little GIF here. I'm going to move my face out of the way up in the corner, and I'm going to let you watch exactly how this amoeba here is going to eat. Pay attention to our pseudopods forming around as it bulges out. I guess this isn't the one that he eats. There's another one that he eats at. But note how they're going to come back together, and they're going to form, and then it forms a vacuole in here. So keep in mind, pseudopod are these bulges that are going out. Your amoeba doesn't have a very good shape to it because it kind of just bulges everywhere with those pseudopods. Our next, we're still on amoebas. Amoebas are protozoan and they live in water. However, that membrane they have that forms those false feet, those pseudopods, is very permeable. It lets so many things in. So the other thing that we need to realize is that they have organelles inside them, one of which is called a contractile vacuole. So as that pseudopod reaches around and creates these vacuoles, which is basically just a storage container, it has one that takes water and just expels it from its cell. That's constantly what this organelle's job is. It just constantly flushes water out of it because it is a very permeable cell membrane there. That constantly lets water in and out. And if we just keep taking in water, then we'll eventually just kind of blow up. And if we're not taking in water, we're not going to live very long because all living things need water to survive. Our next protist that we're going to look at is a paramecium. As you can see on the bottom, that's our paramecium. If you look very closely, you can see the cilia and how it moves. Cilia are these wishy-like hairs that surround the whole organism. So it is a single cell, it is one cell, and it has a whole bunch of these little hair structures that go around the outer membrane of this organism. Each one of these things helps propel its movement and help it speed up, slow down to capture food. But they are these tiny hair-like structures all around, not to be confused with flagella, which are those whip-like structures. Flagella are much longer, and you only have one, two, or a few of them when you actually have flagella. Here, this is cilia, and again, they cover the whole thing, so that's our paramecium. Our parameciums are very special. So they do have a few different things there. They do have two of a lot of things, so keep that in mind. Paramecium are going to have two of those contractile vacuoles, this organelles that take in and out water. They're going to have two nuclei as well. They're going to have a big nuclei and a small nuclei. The big nuclei is its everyday tasks kind of thing, and the small one is going to be used for reproduction. They also have two ways of doing reproduction that you probably are pretty familiar with, very similar to bacteria. They can go through binary fission and they can go through conjunction. Next one we want to look at is flagellates, or flagellates. These are protists that use flagellum or a flagella to move. Down here you have your dinoflagellate. You will note that it has two flagella, these two whip-like structures you can see whipping around to help it move out of its way. But yeah, you should be pretty familiar with flagella by now. Last one we are going to look at for this slideshow is the parasitic aspect of them. Some protists or protozoans are parasitic, meaning they do need to fully function inside of a host. These could be helpful to the host or not. Just keep in mind that these relationships can help both ways. We call that symbiosis if it's mutually beneficial. Mutually beneficial mutualism, which is a type of symbiosis, which the two species are going to be living together. So one way is that protists live inside termites, which help them digest. Again, termites, if you can think of what a termite eats, it eats wood. That is a pretty difficult substance to digest for most species. So these protists that live inside of its intestines or digestion tract can help it break down foods. However, parasitic protists are not always beneficial. Sometimes they do harm you. The one that you need to be familiar with is Giardia. This is why we purify our water when we find it on a stream or something. We can't just take the water out and drink it. These are harmful. They can reproduce in your digestive tract and mess with your digestive system. So they're not too much fun to have. You just got to be careful on where you're getting your water from. Again, these protozoans as parasites can move in a variety of ways, like we were saying, but they do need a host in order to really function and reproduce. So your example of your parasitic one is malaria.